Before you ever look across the table and ask, "Who is he?" you must first look in the mirror and ask, "Who am I?" Too many people rush into relationships, rush into commitments, rush into searching for someone else to complete them without ever pausing to understand themselves. But here's the truth. If you don't know who you are, you will accept anything, tolerate everything, and lose yourself in the process. Identity is the foundation of power. Vision begins with identity, and without identity, you are like a ship sailing with no anchor, tossed in any direction the wind decides. Knowing who you are means being clear about your values. What do you stand for? What are the principles that guide your decisions? A person without principles can be swayed by flattery, by charm, by temporary pleasures, and by shallow promises. But when you know your values, you are not impressed by words. You are moved only by actions that align with your vision. A queen doesn't bend her standards just to be chosen. She sets the standards and requires others to rise to them. And that strength only comes when you are grounded in self-awareness. Knowing who you are also means understanding your strengths and weaknesses. Too often, people want someone else to come in and cover up their insecurities. They think a relationship will fix what is broken inside of them. But another person cannot heal wounds you refuse to face. You must do the work of healing, of growth, of building confidence within yourself. When you know your weaknesses, you don't hide from them, you work on them. When you know your strengths, you maximize them. You walk into any room fully aware of what you bring, and you never downplay it. That kind of clarity is magnetic. People can sense when you truly know yourself, and they respect it. Knowing who you are means defining your vision before anyone else tries to define it for you. Vision is not just about career goals or financial success. Vision is about your life's direction. Where do you want to go? What kind of legacy do you want to leave? What kind of energy do you want around you every single day? Too many people drift through life waiting for someone else to provide them with purpose. But the danger of that is you end up living someone else's story, not your own. When you have a clear vision, you filter everything through it. You know what opportunities to embrace and which ones to reject. You know what type of people to welcome into your circle and which ones to walk away from without hesitation. Knowing who you are means never settling for less than what aligns with your destiny. The world is full of distractions, full of voices that will tell you to compromise, to accept less, to dim your light so others can shine. But when you have defined your identity, you never trade your crown for approval. You don't allow anyone to treat you as an option because you know you are a priority. You don't chase after attention because attention cannot compare to respect. And respect is earned when you stand firm in your identity unapologetically. Knowing who you are means learning to love yourself deeply before expecting anyone else to. Self-love is not about vanity, it is about worth. It is about refusing to beg for scraps of affection because you already feed yourself with affirmation, with growth, with peace, with purpose. When you love yourself, you set boundaries that protect your energy. You no longer allow people to drain you, manipulate you, or take advantage of your kindness. You understand that love should not break you down, it should build you up. And you refuse to settle for any connection that doesn't align with that truth. Knowing who you are means mastering your mind before you try to connect with someone else's. Your thoughts shape your reality, and if your mind is filled with doubt, fear, insecurity, and comparison, then every relationship you enter will be poisoned by that. But when you master your thoughts, when you feed your mind with strength, with clarity, with discipline, then you show up in relationships whole, not half empty. You don't come looking for someone to complete you. You come complete. And you seek someone who complements you. That's the difference between dependence and partnership. Knowing who you are means walking with a vision so strong that people either respect it or remove themselves. You don't chase anyone. You don't beg anyone. You don't lower your standards to be accepted. Instead, you raise the level of the room simply by being there. You become the standard. You become the inspiration. You become the vision embodied. And when you stand in that kind of power, you no longer need to ask, Who is he? Because you already know that whoever enters your life must first answer the greater question. Does he know who I am? Before you spend your time analyzing someone else, before you dissect his words, his actions, his past, his dreams, you must have already done that work on yourself. Too many people rush into relationships hoping to uncover the mystery of who another person is, but they haven't yet uncovered the mystery within their own soul. How can you demand clarity from another person when you walk in confusion about yourself? How can you expect loyalty, strength, and vision from someone else when you have not yet demanded it from yourself? The truth is simple. The depth to which you know yourself will always determine the depth to which you can truly know someone else. Knowing who you are is not a casual thing. It is not about labels or temporary achievements. It is about identity that goes far deeper than appearance, career, or status. It's about answering the hard questions. What do I truly value? What do I stand for when no one is watching? What battles am I willing to fight? And what things will I refuse to compromise on no matter the cost? Without these answers, you cannot enter into a relationship with power because you will always be swayed by outside forces. If you don't set your own definition, others will write one for you, and you will wake up living someone else's life. When you know who you are, you stop allowing circumstances to shake your foundation. You stop needing constant validation from others because your validation is rooted inside. Too many people go searching for affirmation in the eyes of a partner, hoping to feel valuable only when someone else declares them valuable. But that is a fragile way to live, because the moment their attention shifts, your confidence collapses. When your worth is rooted in your own vision, in your own self-awareness, you become unshakable. You bring value into every connection instead of draining it out. You don't come asking to be completed, you come complete. When you know who you are, you stop tolerating what is beneath your standards. You no longer get trapped in cycles of broken relationships because you can spot misalignment from the very beginning. You are not blinded by charm, gifts, or empty promises. You can discern character because your own character has already been defined. People without vision are easily deceived because they don't know what they are looking for. But when you walk in identity, you can separate appearance from authenticity. You don't fall for potential, you align with purpose. When you know who you are, your life has a direction that no relationship can derail. Too many people abandon their own dreams in exchange for someone else's. They pour all of themselves into another person and neglect the calling that was placed inside of them. But when you are grounded in identity, you don't lose yourself to gain love. You don't shrink your goals to make someone else comfortable. You don't bury your vision so someone else can shine. Instead, you rise. And in rising, you set the standard for what type of partner belongs beside you. You make it clear through your actions, your discipline, your consistency that you are not here to play small. When you know who you are, you communicate differently. Your words carry weight because they are anchored in conviction. You don't speak to impress, you speak to express your truth. You don't fear rejection because rejection cannot erase your identity. You don't beg to be chosen because you already live as chosen. That energy commands respect in every interaction. People treat you according to the way you treat yourself. And when you walk in identity, when you stand tall in your vision, you force others to recognize it. When you know who you are, you build boundaries that protect your peace and your future. Boundaries are not walls to keep love out. They are gates that filter what is allowed in. Without boundaries, anyone can step into your life, drain your energy, and leave you broken. But when your identity is strong, you guard your space with wisdom. You do not settle for people who cannot match your level of respect, effort, and vision. And by holding those boundaries firmly, you attract those who are meant to walk with you, not those who are only passing through. When you know who you are, you change the way you see relationships altogether. It is no longer about asking, "Who is he?" as though the answer to that question defines your worth. Instead, it becomes about asking, does who he is align with who I am? That shift changes everything. It takes you from a place of desperation to a place of discernment, from seeking approval to demanding alignment, from chasing love to standing in power. When you know who you are, you embody vision so clearly that it becomes impossible for others to ignore. You no longer wonder if someone sees your value because you live in a way that makes it undeniable. You don't perform for attention, you don't compromise for acceptance, and you don't lose yourself trying to gain someone else. You become the vision, the standard, the example. And when you live in that kind of power, you don't ask, "Who is he?" until you are absolutely certain of the answer to the greater question, "Who am I?" The greatest mistake you can make in relationships is to spend all your energy trying to figure out someone else while neglecting the work of figuring out yourself. You want to know his intentions, his values, his ambitions, his flaws, but have you sat down with yourself and asked those same questions? You want to decode his actions, but have you decoded your own patterns? You want to understand his vision for the future, but have you clarified your own? The truth is that if you don't know who you are, you won't be able to recognize who he is. You will see him through the lens of your confusion, your insecurities, your unresolved past. And that distortion will lead you into cycles of disappointment. Knowing who you are is the foundation for everything. It is the standard by which you measure every connection. If you have no clear standard, then anyone can walk into your life and you will bend yourself to fit them. But when you know who you are, you do not bend, you filter. You do not chase, you choose. You do not beg, you decide. And those decisions are rooted in identity, not desperation. Knowing who you are requires brutal honesty. It means confronting your story, the good and the painful. It means admitting where you've been broken, where you've been hurt, and where you still need growth. Too many people avoid this step. They try to cover their wounds by finding someone else to distract them. But wounds that are not healed eventually bleed onto the people who didn't cause them. Self-awareness is not about being perfect, it's about being real. When you are real with yourself, you stop carrying illusions into relationships. You stop pretending to be someone you're not. You show up authentically, and that authenticity demands respect. Knowing who you are means defining your identity outside of relationships. If your entire sense of worth is tied to whether someone stays or leaves, then you have no identity of your own. You become dependent, not powerful. A queen is still a queen whether she sits on a throne or walks through the battlefield. Her crown is not given by someone else. It is hers by right. In the same way, your identity cannot be borrowed from anyone else. It cannot be defined by how much attention you get or how many people approve of you. It must come from within. Knowing who you are sharpens your vision for what you will and will not accept. When you are unclear about yourself, you end up tolerating behavior that contradicts your values. You make excuses for actions that disrespect your standards. You cling to relationships that drain you because you are afraid of being alone. But when you have clarity, you don't tolerate what doesn't align with your identity. You don't excuse what breaks your boundaries. You don't compromise your peace for the sake of company. You understand that solitude with self-respect is greater than togetherness with disrespect. Knowing who you are strengthens your voice. You no longer silence yourself to avoid conflict or to keep someone else comfortable. You no longer swallow your truth out of fear of rejection. Instead, you speak from conviction, not insecurity. You communicate with confidence because you know your perspective is valid and your needs are important. That kind of strength does not push people away. It filters the wrong ones and draws the right ones closer. Knowing who you are shifts the way you view partnership. You stop searching for someone to complete you and instead look for someone who complements you. You don't enter relationships as a half looking for another half. You come as a whole and you seek another whole. That shift changes the power dynamic. It moves you from dependency to strength. It allows you to build connections based on alignment instead of desperation. Knowing who you are demands discipline. Identity is not built in a single moment of inspiration. It is forged daily in the decisions you make, the habits you keep, the standards you uphold. Every time you compromise on what you know you deserve, you weaken your identity. Every time you stand firm, you reinforce it. And the more disciplined you are in living your truth, the easier it becomes to recognize whether someone else belongs in your life or not. Knowing who you are makes you magnetic. People can feel when you are grounded in yourself. They can sense the confidence, the clarity, the conviction. It is not arrogance. It is assurance. You don't need to prove your worth because you embody it. And when you carry yourself that way, people treat you accordingly. You are not overlooked. You are not dismissed. You are not treated as an option. You are seen as a standard. Knowing who you are transforms the question of who is he into something deeper. It is no longer about whether he is charming, successful, or attractive. It becomes about whether he is aligned with the identity you have already defined. Does his character match your values? Does his vision complement your vision? Does his presence bring peace or does it bring chaos? These answers are only clear when your own identity is clear. Without that foundation, you will mistake charisma for character, attraction for alignment, attention for love. But with identity, you see clearly. You don't ask, who is he? In desperation, you ask it in discernment. Before you concern yourself with the question of who he is, you must be fully rooted in the knowledge of who you are. Too often, people waste years analyzing another person's behavior, dissecting their motives, trying to decode mixed signals, all while remaining strangers to themselves. But the truth is, the lens through which you see others is always shaped by how you see yourself. If your identity is blurry, your judgment will be blurry. If you are unsure of your worth, you will constantly misinterpret his actions as a reflection of it. The strength of your perception begins with the strength of your self-awareness. Knowing who you are is not just an abstract idea. It is practical, it is powerful, and it is non-negotiable. It is knowing your boundaries, your values, your priorities, and your vision for life. Without those anchors, you will drift into relationships where you compromise everything just to be chosen. You will mold yourself to fit his world instead of demanding a life where he must fit into yours. But when you know who you are, you set the tone. You decide what energy you will allow. You choose what behaviors you will accept. You create the standard, and anyone who comes into your life must rise to meet it. Knowing who you are requires self-examination. It means facing yourself without filters, without excuses, without denial. It means asking, what do I truly believe in? What gives me peace? What kind of energy drains me? What kind of life do I want to build 5, 10, 20 years from now? If you cannot answer these questions, you are vulnerable to accepting anyone and anything because you have no blueprint. But when your blueprint is clear, your discernment becomes sharp. You no longer confuse temporary excitement with long-term alignment. You can look at someone's actions and immediately know if they fit into your vision or not. Knowing who you are gives you confidence that no external force can shake. Too many people let their self-worth fluctuate depending on who stays, who leaves, or who chooses them. That is not identity. That is insecurity. True identity means that whether someone praises you or rejects you, you remain the same. Your worth is not up for negotiation. Your crown does not disappear because someone else refuses to acknowledge it. This kind of confidence changes the entire way you move. You no longer chase validation. You command respect. Knowing who you are also protects you from manipulation. People who lack identity are easy targets because they can be convinced of anything. A few sweet words, a little attention, a promise of commitment, and they hand over their heart without discernment. But when you are grounded in yourself, you are not swayed by empty talk. You don't need to be told who you are because you already know it. You can tell the difference between consistency and performance, between genuine intent and temporary desire. This kind of strength doesn't just protect your heart, it elevates your standards. Knowing who you are ensures that you do not lose yourself in the process of trying to love someone else. Relationships often fail because one person gives up their identity to merge into the other. They abandon their dreams, their passions, their individuality thinking that love requires sacrifice of self. But true love is not about erasing yourself. It's about becoming more of yourself and finding someone who supports that. If you don't know who you are, you risk building your entire life around someone else, only to discover later that you no longer recognize the person in the mirror. But when your identity is clear, you maintain your individuality within any connection. You love without losing yourself. Knowing who you are makes your standards unshakable. You don't tolerate disrespect disguised as love. You don't excuse patterns of behavior that contradict your peace. You don't lower your expectations just to avoid being alone. Instead, you understand that solitude with clarity is far better than togetherness with chaos. You know that being a queen is not about who sits next to you. It is about how you carry yourself regardless of who notices. This kind of strength makes you unmovable. Knowing who you are shapes the way you define compatibility. You no longer ask, who is he in isolation? You ask, does who he is align with who I am? That is the key. Because a man can be good, successful, attractive, and still not be the right one if he is not aligned with your identity and your vision. Without self-awareness, you will overlook red flags because you are blinded by surface qualities. But with identity, you see clearly. You can separate potential from purpose, charm from character, chemistry from compatibility. Knowing who you are makes your presence powerful. You no longer have to demand respect because respect is automatically given to those who are unapologetically themselves. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable, and you no longer exaggerate to impress. You show up authentically, and that authenticity creates authority. People know where you stand. They know what you represent. They know your value without you ever having to beg for it. Knowing who you are means you have already established your throne before anyone else enters your life. You are not waiting for someone to come and crown you. You walk in the crown every day through your actions, your standards, your discipline, and your vision. When you are clear on your identity, you no longer spend sleepless nights asking, who is he? Because the only men who even enter your space are the ones who have already proven they understand who you are and are willing to align with it. Too many people live their lives searching for clarity about someone else while remaining uncertain about themselves. They spend endless hours trying to figure out his intentions, his motives, his dreams, his flaws, but never pause to confront their own. They ask, what does he want? But rarely ask, what do I want? They ask, where is he going? But rarely ask, where am I going? The truth is, if you do not know who you are, you will always interpret him through the fog of your own confusion. You will settle for less than you deserve because you don't even know what you deserve. You will tolerate chaos because you have not defined your peace. You will mistake attention for love because you have not yet learned to love yourself. Knowing who you are means having a clear and unshakable sense of identity. It means that your worth is not tied to who accepts you, who chooses you, or who validates you. If your confidence rises and falls depending on how someone else treats you, then you are living without a foundation. A queen does not wait for someone else to hand her a crown. She carries it with her, whether others recognize it or not. Your value must be established long before anyone else enters your life, because if it is not, you will look to them to define it, and that is the fastest way to lose yourself. Knowing who you are requires deep self-awareness. It is not about shallow labels or temporary achievements. It is about clarity of purpose and strength of character. You must ask yourself the hard questions. What do I stand for? What do I refuse to compromise on? What gives me fulfillment? What drains me? What vision do I hold for my future? Without these answers, you are a blank canvas, and anyone who comes into your life can paint on you whatever they want. But when you have clarity, you protect your canvas. You don't let someone else write your story. You already have a pen in your hand. Knowing who you are gives you the power to set boundaries that reflect your worth. Boundaries are not barriers to love. They are proof of self-respect. Without them, you allow people to use you, to manipulate you, to take advantage of you. But when you know yourself, you guard your peace like treasure. You don't settle for mixed signals, empty promises, or disrespect. You don't cling to relationships that dishonor you. You understand that saying no to what is wrong is just as important as saying yes to what is right. And in that strength, you attract people who value you instead of those who seek to exploit your uncertainty. Knowing who you are prevents you from losing yourself in the process of loving someone else. Too many people abandon their identity in order to keep a relationship. They silence their voice to avoid conflict. They shrink their dreams so someone else can feel secure. They bend their values to keep someone from leaving. But in doing so, they sacrifice the very essence of who they are. Love was never meant to erase you. It was meant to magnify you. When you are grounded in identity, you never compromise your essence for connection. You bring your full self to the table, and if he cannot handle it, then he is not worthy of it. Knowing who you are sharpens your discernment. Without self-awareness, you confuse charisma for character, chemistry for compatibility, potential for purpose. But when you are clear on yourself, you can see through illusions. You don't get blinded by charm or distracted by appearances. You recognize whether his actions align with your standards. You can ask, "Who is he?" with clarity, because you already know what the answer must look like to fit your vision. You are not deceived by temporary excitement. You measure everything against the identity you have already defined. Knowing who you are transforms the way you view solitude. Instead of fearing being alone, you embrace it as an opportunity to build, to grow, to master yourself. Loneliness is only painful when you don't enjoy your own company. But when you know yourself, solitude becomes strength. You don't rush into relationships just to fill a void. You don't cling to people who disrupt your peace out of fear of being by yourself. You understand that wholeness is built in the quiet moments where you confront your own soul, not in the noise of constant companionship. Knowing who you are makes your presence undeniable. When you walk into a room with clarity of identity, you don't need to demand attention. It gravitates toward you. People respect those who are unapologetically themselves. They admire those who carry themselves with certainty. That certainty is not arrogance, it is authenticity. It is the quiet power of a person who knows their value, their vision, and their voice. That kind of energy cannot be faked, and it cannot be ignored. Knowing who you are elevates every relationship you enter. Because when your identity is clear, you no longer just ask, "Who is he?" You ask, "Does who he is align with who I am?" That question changes everything. It keeps you from attaching yourself to people who are unworthy of your time. It protects you from compromising your standards for temporary affection. It ensures that you do not waste years trying to fix or change someone who was never meant to be part of your journey. Alignment is the key, and alignment can only be recognized when your own identity has already been defined. Knowing who you are means you live as the standard, not the exception. You don't beg for respect, you command it. You don't chase love, you embody it. You don't wait to be chosen, you walk as already chosen. And when you live with that level of conviction, you don't spend your life anxiously asking, "Who is he?" Because you already know that only a man who understands, respects, and aligns with who you are has the right to stay in your presence